These challenges, in our opinion, seem to have overwhelmed our security institutions.
The governors are supposed to be the state security officers of their state.
There is need for us to at least engage the traditional rulers.
We need to do something about our porous borders.
We have to own it from the unit level to the ward level to the local government to state.
Mr. President, the importance of today for us is for us to take action.
Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
What happens in Britain has significance to Nigeria because of the relationship, long-term relationship that we have had.
Senate President urges Nigeria and Britain to broaden bilateral relationship.
Between CBN, the Accountant General's Office and Ministry of Finance and DMO, there seems to be a lot of confusion going on.
And Senate Public Account Committee frowns at conflicting figures over Nigeria's debt profile. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Senate. I am Hussaina Amina Aboki. Senate plenary was on hold for the whole of last week to enable senators partake in campaigns as well as the gubernatorial and state houses of assembly elections. In spite of this, however, the Public Accounts Committee was on duty, hosting several federal government agencies who answered queries on various subject matters. The Senate President also hosted the outgoing British High Commissioner to Nigeria, Ms. Catriona Laing, to a courtesy call. Stay tuned for the details when the program starts fully after the break.
The Senate will send a message to the President
to reap opportunities from that.
Raise a matter of urgent public importance, and we are aware that when this particular motion comes up
for a longer term development, arise to second the motion.
Those in favor of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Thanks for joining us. As I mentioned at the beginning, the Senate Committee on Public Accounts was on duty last week and it hosted some government agencies to interactive sessions, during which they answered queries from the Auditor General of the Federation. The Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, as well as the Rural Electrification Agency, were amongst those that appeared before the committee. The report on this is compiled and presented from our studio.
198,775,920. The Office of the Accountant General of the Federation was represented at the committee's proceedings by the Deputy Director of the Consolidated Account Department, Mr. Shaibu Badmos Sikiru. Representative of the Auditor General of the Federation in the committee, Mr. Emmanuel Bamigbaye, who presented a query against the office, stated that audit review of the consolidated statement for the financial performance of the federal government showed that the federal government had a total debt portfolio of 19.9 trillion naira as at 31st of December 2019. The government also had short-term loans and debt amounting to 4.297 trillion naira as at 31st of December 2019. That the cost of servicing the above-mentioned amounts during the period under review was 347.198 billion naira, which was not recognized in the federal government financial statement, and that the exchange rate for the transaction was not disclosed either. He then spoke on what is attributable to the above-mentioned anomalies, the consequences, as well as their recommendations.
The above anomalies could be attributed to weaknesses in the internal control system in the consolidation process. Risk, understatement of interest payable, that is, current liabilities. 2, omission of material information. Recommendations. The Accountant General of the Federation is requested to 1. Disclose the sources of servicing interest on federal government domestic bonds amounting to 322,429,513,500 naira and service charge on external loan amounting to 24,774,262,420 naira.
The query generated a response from the representative of the Accountant General of the Federation.
It's not that we didn't have the figure in our accounts. We had it in our reserve. But because we do not want us to be apportioning without documentation, as soon as we got the DMO's report, we now debited interest accordingly and credited the reserve which we have debited earlier. And we said they seek that we should adjust the account to reflect these expenditures, which was done. Our reserve was credited and the interest were charged appropriately. We knew we had to have this interest, but because we do not have we don't want our figures to be different from that of DMO, who has the ledgers. So we wrote them. In fact, we wrote them even before the audit, but we wanted to submit the accounts quickly. We would have gotten the letter from them and then do it before the audit even began. So we adjusted it appropriately, and the account is reflecting these new changes.
If I'm embarking on a project in July, I start the process.
In reacting to the matter in question, the committee's vice chairman, Senator Ibrahim Hassan Hadija, alongside another member, Senator Ibrahim Yahya Olori Egbe, decried what they described as distortion of the nation's financial situation, alongside issuance of conflicting figures of the nation's debt profile by some of the nation's financial managers.
Between CBN, the Accountant General's Office and Ministry of Finance, and DMO, there seems to be a lot of confusion going on. You know, depending on who you are talking to, you can get 3 different versions of the nation's debt. And in case you haven't noticed, the major credit agencies have actually downgraded us twice in the last 3 or 4 months, which means that our ability to borrow is now impaired because the interest rate is higher. And Bloomberg in particular, part of the reason they gave is that we're being very opaque with our financial situation.
Why we are saying this is that our children, our grandchildren will pay this money. They are not dash. And those are the records that we have when we say we have dead body. It is triple jeopardy. We have money that we are going to pay back, or we are paying interest already, which is affecting our economy as at now. 2, we don't have anything to show for what we are spending. The worst of it again, outside even all this other one, is in terms of utilization. And even at that,
the committee chairman, Senator Matthew Orogide, in his reaction, lamented the wrong use of borrowed funds, citing an example with the misuse of a $1 billion Eurobond offer to Nigeria.
That $1 billion, what was it supposed to be used for? The prospectus was clear that it was going to be used for gas to power projects. And NNPC was to drive it. $600 million was supposed to go to NNPC. When that money came to this country, NNPC did not get $1. They diverted the money to useless projects. Lagos-Ibadan Way, Second Niger Bridge, refurbishing 4 airports. Went again, the Chinese brought $500 million to add to 107 million. You were there now, went to go and do the inspection. So that money, $1 billion, out of it, $350 million was given to NSIA. NSIA had that money for 4 years. All right? So we now ask, how much is Nigeria using to service that debt? So that we know that the one given to NSIA, let us see what they are paying. So that $1 billion borrowing was just completely misused.
A situation where you pick a person who was a commissioner for finance.
Another member of the committee blamed the anomaly on the deployment of poorly qualified staff to handle sensitive issues like this, and used the opportunity to call on the president-elect Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu to work towards the assemblage of a highly qualified team that will help him successfully perform the task of governance.
We want that magic, that Tinubu magic in Lagos, that's a recruitment drive that makes him to look for the best team to work, which gave him this position. Let it repeat itself now. That is what we want for our people here. We don't want stories again. We want things to get well for the country. We want this country to move. We want the right kind of people to be there. Radical people who are going to think. We are not looking for politicians who have no business, who don't have second address, for positions now. We want to look for technocrats that have something to offer. They may not be politicians. They don't even understand the number of parties they have in the country. They may not know the names of major political parties. but they are possessed of the capacity to do the job.
Due to the magnitude of the finance involved, the committee was not able to reach a resolution and therefore deferred hearing on the issue to another day to enable more stakeholders to appear.
For the financial evaluation,
another federal government organization that appeared before the committee same day was the Rural Electrification Agency. The query against them had to do with irregularities observed in the award of procurement contracts by the agency to the following companies in the amount cited by their names. There are Ballistic Concepts Limited, 185 million naira, Writers Energy Limited, 140 million naira, Dantonic Investment, 9.4 million naira, as well as Best Brothers International Limited, 49 million naira. He added that the Auditor General also observed that an advertisement placement was not made on the above-mentioned issue. He added that another area in which irregularities were suspected but eventually cleared was on international training. Earlier on, it was alleged that there is no evidence of attendance, but later on, the evidence surfaced.
REA was able to provide the training report. The training report is now cited. The training report, the pictures taken at the training venue on passports, on international passports, their data pages, payment vouchers for the training, and lastly, certificates issued. They are issued for the training. They are all here.
A director at the agency responded to this.
It's a 2017 budget. Yes, provision was made for 2017, yes, sir. We had the money with us into 2018, yes, sir.
The committee chairman commented.
Anything that is not budgeted for, no matter how pure the procurement process is, the problem that we have with that is, where did the money come from? So extra budgetary spending, where did the money come from?
With this, the second query on international training was vacated while the first was sustained for further investigation.
That was a report on the sitting by the Public Accounts Committee of the Senate. Next is our notebook segment. Our topic today is the legislative debate. What is it? What does it seek to achieve? Stand by for the answers.
The legislative debate is a parliamentary procedure where parliamentarians deliberate on issues brought to the floor for legislative concurrence and approval. These issues may be motions, bills, or points of orders, among other matters. After the sponsor of any of these matters has made his case, legislators are given the opportunity to deliberate in favor of or against the issue brought up. After the debates, the presiding officer will seek the opinion of the entire parliament through a question, where those in favor will say yea and those against will say nay. Whichever side gets the majority will have the day and the matter will be approved.
Welcome back. We now continue the program with reports from the Office of the Senate President, who hosted the outgoing British High Commissioner to Nigeria, Ms. Catriona Laing, on a courtesy call to his office on Tuesday, the 14th of March 2023. The report is compiled and presented from our studio.
Without doubt,
during the courtesy call, issues pertaining to Nigeria's democracy, the legislature, amongst others, were discussed. Senate President Ahmed Lawan drew attention to the fact that the stability achieved by the 9th legislature can be attributable to the cordial legislative-executive relationship and advised the incoming 10th Assembly to take a cue from that.
Going forward, the 10th National Assembly can define how it wants to go, but I believe that there is always need for stability within the Parliament itself. That is to say that there must be a partisan approach to issues, that the national interest should define where and when to do what. And I also feel that the national interest should define the relationship between the executive and the legislature, regardless. And if that is done, I think the ultimate beneficiaries will be the Nigerian people.
He also acknowledged that even with the effort of this administration to put a lot of things right before the end of its tenure in 2 months to come, there are still some issues pending, with some of them being the high cost of borrowing and the need to generate more revenues for the nation's economy.
We need to improve on our revenue generation, collection. We need to reduce the borrowing, because the cost of borrowing is high, and when we spend over 90% of our revenues in servicing debt, I think it's not the kind of situation that we would like to continue with going forward. So there are challenges, and it's not for us to wait for the next administration to come and fix.
He then commended the outgoing envoy for her excellent performance, particularly her contributions to the nation's legislature towards the passage of the Electoral Act.
You have done a very good job. You have linked up, you have connected, you have networked. We enjoyed working with you in the Senate and indeed in the National Assembly. And one aspect that I can easily recall is our work on the amendment of the Electoral Act. I think I received a lot of pressure from you, and of course but for the benefit of hindsight, I think we have done a marvelous job in the amendment to the Electoral Act, and today Nigerians can see the benefit. And I must take this opportunity to commend the members of the 9th National Assembly, the Senate and the House, for doing a lot of work, legislative interventions that have made so many segments of our lives better.
The Senate President also condoled the British government over the demise of Queen Elizabeth II and congratulated the new King of England, King Charles II, alongside the new Prime Minister, Mr. Rishi Sunak.
We wish him a very successful tenure, even though it's a lifelong tenure, but to us, what happens in Britain has significance to Nigeria. Indeed. Because of the relationship, long-term relationship that we have had. And also to congratulate you on the new Prime Minister. Without doubt, the world is changing, and everywhere people look for those who can provide solutions. And it's a lesson to us in Nigeria particularly, that we should at all times look for leaders who can deal with the issues that affect us, rather than emphasize on other sentiments. It doesn't matter where my president should come from. What should matter is whether my president can deal with the issues that affect my lives and the lives of the people that I represent. And this is something that the world should learn all over, because it makes more sense that the world is seen as one.
Speaking earlier, the outgoing British envoy gave the purpose of her visit as being to thank the Senate President for the support he had given her during her stay in Nigeria.
I want to thank you for all the support you've given me and my team, all the many bills you've helped navigate through Parliament, which is, of course, the foundation of the whole governance process. You know, it's what goes on in the Parliament and the Senate is really the foundation of a democracy. And I think you've done an amazing job, and we've worked very well with you on all of that. So this is really just for me to say farewell, to say thank you, but not the end. I hope we'll continue to, whatever role you move into, I'll be certainly watching Nigeria very closely, and I hope my successor, Richard Montgomery, will be able to forge a strong relationship with you in your new position as Senator-elect. And yeah, so it's really just to say thank you and farewell. Thank you very much.
In an interview session with the media at the end of the courtesy call, the outgoing British High Commissioner also gave her impression about politics in Nigeria.
Nigerian politics is just fascinating. I was here for the last election and I finished with this election. And I've been impressed with Nigeria's democratic journey. Yes, there have been some setbacks, but overall, I see this as positive, and Nigerians should be proud. Your electoral map looks very different from when I arrived in 2019.
On Nigeria's democracy, she had this to say.
Nigeria is the biggest democracy in Africa. Nigeria is one of the most important countries in Africa, so the world watches your progress to democracy. And although there were, some disappointments in this election, I think overall Nigerians should be proud. Since 1999, you've stuck with democracy, and that cannot be taken for granted because you look at the region as a whole. A lot of countries have had coups, presidents who refuse to step down. The electoral map here looks very different. You're moving to a three-party system, maybe even four. And I think Nigerians overall should recognise their vote does count.
The British envoy also spoke on some of the toughest periods she witnessed in Nigeria and commended Nigerians for their resilience in managing the situation.
We had COVID. Obviously, insecurity has got much worse since I've been here. But Nigerian people are incredibly resilient, very entrepreneurial, in senior positions all over the world, and I remain very optimistic for Nigeria's future. So it's been a wonderful tour. I'm very sad to be going, but because the UK-Nigeria partnership is so strong and it's a short flight, I'm going to be coming back.
Inside the Senate, we'll round off with the profile of Senator Hezekiah Ayuba Dimka. Sit back as we unveil this distinguished senator to you. Don't go away.
Senator Hezekiah Ayuba Dimka was born in Kawiri, Kanki local government area of Plateau State. Attended schools in Kawiri in Plateau State and Azare in Bauchi State for his first school living certificate, as well as government secondary school Azare from 1968 to 1972 for his West African School Certificate WASC. From there, he joined the Nigerian Police as a cadet officer after undergoing an officer cadre training at the Police College Ikeja, Lagos in 1973. Thereafter, Senator Dimka served in the Special Branch, now known as SSS, as a crime detective before being converted back to full police general duties. In the course of his duties as a policeman, Senator Dimka served as ADC to the former governor of Bauchi State, Alhaji Abubakar Tatari Ali, in 1978. He served as divisional police officer, DPO, in different parts of the country and commanded police mobile squadrons in Lagos and Maiduguri. He was also in charge of the railway police as well as the Murtala Mohammed International Airport Commands, among others, as Commissioner of Police. While on duty, Senator Dimka enrolled as a student of Benue State University, where he earned a Bachelor of Science and Master of Science degrees in Public Administration in 2002. As Commissioner of Police, Senator Dimka rose to the position of the Quartermaster General of the Nigerian Police at the Police Headquarters Abuja before heading Delta State Command in 2008. Before retirement, Senator Hezekiah Dimka bagged awards and recognition within the Nigerian Police Force, like the Best Commissioner of Police Southeast Zone 2003 to 2004, Award of Honor from Imo State House of Assembly for Development and Defense of Democracy and Rule of Law 1999 to 2003, among others. He retired from the Nigerian Police in 2008 after a meritorious service and joined politics in 2015. He contested for the position of senator in the 2019 general elections and won to represent Plateau South Senatorial District on the platform of APC. In the Senate, he is chairman, Senate Committee on Drugs and Narcotics, and a member of several other committees. His legislative interests include security, education, agriculture, as well as youth and women empowerment.
This is where we end this episode of Inside the Senate. Join us next week for another edition. Thanks for watching.